have you been?
I'm doing very well. I'm so excited that this tour that we did, we just finished 51 shows in America.
Yeah.
It was so nice, after being locked down for so long and then doing a very challenging European tour to this. It was a nice, blessed relief, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do know. And of course, you had the operation, didn't you? When did you have the
Yep.
operation? Was it earlier in the year?
Well, I had two. The first one was like 2 years ago, and they fixed three tendons.
Yeah.
And that was a long time coming. It was kind of just slowly deteriorating from, I don't know, playing so much.
Hazard of the job.
That's right. Doing my job. It's a job hazard. Being a rock guitar player, I'm telling you, it's a hazardous business.
Yeah.
And then at that same time, I had this trigger finger and I had that fixed, and that was easy. And that was healing, and I was doing great. But then halfway through the healing, which was like 6 months into it, I had an accident and I tore another tendon. So I was making in Violet, and I had to, I decided to finish the record before I had it fixed. So, because I knew I wanted to record, I needed to write and record Teeth of the Hydra, which is that song with the crazy guitar.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to play it after the surgery. So I waited, and then I got the surgery, and then I had an American tour planned, but we had to move it because I had to heal. So we moved that tour, and that turned into the tour that I just finished. But before that was there was a European tour scheduled, and I wanted to do it. In hindsight, I went too early. I wasn't totally healed, and I couldn't play the Hydra. So I did the European tour, and it was a little limited. And unfortunately, I didn't have the Hydra. So by the time we finished that tour and we were prepping for America, I was back in shape and I was ready to go. And the show blossomed finally. It really, really came together. And we did just a glorious American tour. And it was just so good to be on that stage again and feeling great. It was just amazing. So now it's after about 2 years of all this, I'm chillaxed.
You're back. You're feeling like yourself again. That's great. I saw your show when you were over in London at the Palladium, and I no one noticed that it was a great show. I've got an incredible picture of you with the light coming down, and I was like, look at him with his guitar and the light. It's like he's connecting with a higher being. It's like that's what the playing's like. No, it was super cool.
That's what artists do when they're playing. They're connecting.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not quite there yet because I'm still a beginner, so I haven't gone past the overthinking everything. But yeah, when you finally get to let yourself go, I can imagine it's a magical moment.
Well, I would assume that there's something that you do in your life where you do reach that state. What do you do that's very creative that you enjoy doing that feels simple to you?
What do? I like making things. I'm quite arty, but I love skiing. Skiing is just, we're at the top of that.
So you know that feeling that you get when you're going down the mountain. You don't have to think about, look out for that. Now I have to turn. How is my form? You're not thinking about any of that. You're just in that state of connectedness. You're totally connected, and it's like you got this.
Yeah.
You have there's no fear. There's no concern for the future. There's no feeling that you're not fitting in or anything like that. It's just perfect freedom, right? That feeling of freedom.
Yeah.
So you're doing it now. That's it. That's the evidence of a particular state of mind, and you can grasp that with just by remembering it, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want to feel when you're playing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you were learning how to ski, you went through a process where you weren't free. Yeah.
Yeah.
you had to think about, look out for that tree, you know, and
Yeah.
you had to you had to focus and be like, you know, well, no, I can do this better, and I have to get my poles up or whatever it is. But then eventually that all goes away and you're just connected, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you want to do with your guitar. That's what I do, and that's the best way to play.
How do I get there, Steve?
You right now you're just going through the, like skiing. You're
Yeah.
going through the I call it the academic stage.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
keep your head down and keep doing it, keep learning, but take one piece of music and learn it really, really, really well. Something simple that you know you could play, and learn it and keep doing it over and over and over and over. It's just like skiing then. It turns into like that feeling like skiing, because
Yeah.
you don't have to think after a while.
That's true. So then you get to experience that moment of just complete, almost musical meditation, just kind of lose.
It's musical meditation. And here's the thing. Once you touch it once, you got a flavor for it.
Yeah.
And then that you get deeper into it, and then you're playing.
And then there you are. Then you can finally call yourself a guitarist.
That's right.
I can't wait for this moment.
You can always call yourself a guitarist, but to be a guitarist, an effective one, is just remember that skiing. And I'll tell you, you know, I know we're doing this interview about the Gash record. Riding, when I was a kid, riding a motorcycle, a Harley, it gives you that. And even when I was an adult and I started back into the Harley culture, when you're on a motorcycle and you're in the wind and you're out there and you're with your friends and you've got the road and you've got the scenery, it's like that feeling of skiing.
Yeah.
When you're free. And it's like that feeling that I get when I'm playing the guitar and I'm free. You know, and that's what it's an addiction for a lot of motorcycle riders. When you talk to them and you go down deep, you find out that's what they're chasing. They're chasing that feeling that you get when you're when you're connected to your skiing. It's the feeling that I get when I'm connected to my music. And I embrace that feeling. And the reason why I recorded the record was because when we would go riding, I had these great, like a Harley with these speakers on it, you know.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
Music, it sounded so good, but all the music I was listening to, it's like, because I write music, I'm like, I know the music I want to listen to when we're riding our motorcycles. And I just, in a heat of like instant inspiration, I went into the studio and I like recorded this whole record in a week so that we could have something to listen to when we were riding our motorcycles. And that would enhance that feeling that you get when you're on a motorcycle and you're in the wind, so to speak. You know, you're in that state of meditative bliss.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, okay. So have you listened to the record whilst you've been on your Harley then?
Oh, after I recorded it back in 91.
Yeah.
That's all we listened to when we would go riding.
And was the idea ever to release it, or was it literally just a kind of a personal project thing for you and your mates on the bike?
At first, it was just a personal project because, you know, there's a lot of mental strategies that can surround a musician when they go to record a record. Who's going to like this?
Yeah.
Who am I going to get to produce it? Is this the right song? Maybe we should let other people hear it and see what they think about these songs. And is radio going to play this? And what's the first single? And all of these things, right? Mm-hmm. And that's fine. That's it can be part of the process. But when I make my solo music, I don't think of any of that, you know, because my music is not radio. It's not accessible that way. So I just go and do whatever I want. So when it came time to do this record, I didn't think about any of that stuff. What's the first single? You know, I didn't. First of all, battling radio is a task I don't treasure.
I've always got that impression from you that you do just put music out that you love and you want to do, which I think must be just incredible as an artist to be able to just do that, to not have to worry and take that worry out of it.
Yeah, and some artists they thrive for that kind of radio type music. That's what's natural to them. That's natural to them. I like that music, but it's not natural to me to write it. I'm very fortunate because in my early years, I was with these big bands and they were able to kind of help create a foundation for me, a box to stand on for the guitar community. Yeah. So then once the guitar community turned their eyes on what I was doing back in the 80s and 90s, I took a big shift when I was doing my solo music. And I left those bands so I could do my solo music, because if you have a creative vision and you don't follow it, you're cheating yourself.
Yeah.
You're cheating yourself of your potential and your joy, because your happiness and joy is a product of your, obviously it's a state of mind. And when you're in a creative state of mind and you're doing what feels really natural to you, that's your natural state of being. This is what you're meant to be doing. So I instinctually didn't have a choice. I had to do my weird Vai stuff, the dense kind of music that I do, the guitar stuff that I do, the compositional stuff. I just had to do that. And I had to do the Gash record because it came as an inspiration and it said, do me right now.
Yeah, well, it's very different to anything else you've done. It is a very different record for you, for sure. And so it was in the archive for from 91. And so then why now? Why did you want to release it now?
Well, what happened was when I first recorded the record, before the vocals were on it, Gash was one of my best friends at the time. And we go riding every weekend, get our girls and, with our group of friends, and we'd have just the greatest time. And I recorded this record and I was going to sing on it because I didn't know he could sing. That's how weird it was. And my voice
his voice was amazing.
I know, right? It's the weirdest thing. The only thing I ever heard him sing was Frank Sinatra.
Oh, even funnier because it's
and he did it really well. Yeah, he would sing Frank Sinatra really well. And I started to try to sing on this stuff and it just sucked. My voice I have no rock and roll voice, and I was ruining the music. And I would hear Gash and I'd hear him sing sometimes and he'd go ooh, yeah, kind of what is that? Because I know rock and roll voice, and
he's got he had a proper classic rock voice. You listen to some of the tracks on there and you're like, oh, he sounds a little bit like, Paul Stanley there, or,
it's like Paul Stanley, Dave Roth, Graham Bonnet, Bon Scott. He's one of those guys. And I have to tell you, it's the most difficult thing about doing press for this record is trying to explain what he was like. There's no way. I could tell you this. Everybody loved him. He was so funny. He was so charming. He was so intense. He would say things and you go, what? Did you really say that? But then the way he would do it, you just had to love him. And he was a daredevil beyond anybody I knew. Let me tell you something. He would have made the greatest rock star. And I know rock stars. He had all of the elements. He would have been one of our favorites, I could tell you. Because just his personality, you can hear it. And I got him in the studio and he blasted through that stuff. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? You know? And I had this record. So then I had it and we were listening to it, and I started to work on Sex and Religion. And I was thinking, I want to record more music with Gash, because I only had these 8 songs. One of them I wrote with Nikki Sixx, the song New Generation.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that you wrote that with him. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I wrote that with him years and years ago and demoed it and put Gash on it. And so then I had this record, and then tragically John was killed. And this guy escaped death so many times. We used to keep count.
And it was on his motorbike, wasn't it? I know, because he was called because he had a terrible accident and was in a fire and stuff, wasn't he? And then,
well, what happened was, when he was 21, he was riding his bike along these power lines, and he got lost. So he climbed the power line to see where he was, and the electric arc that went through him, and he caught fire, and he fell 60 feet onto a barbed wire fence, and he nearly died. So 60% of his body was completely, scarred, and that's why he got the name Gash, and his ear was completely burnt off, and all of this is just all burnt, but his face and those eyes, those beautiful blue eyes, it's all intact, Yeah. And he was so much fun. I just can't even explain it.
Did you?
After he died, I was so disheartened. I just put the record on the shelf, and I couldn't even listen to it for years. And then I started listening to it, and through the years, more and more, and I'm like, God, I love this record. It's just so simple and straight ahead and melodic, and his voice sounds so perfect for this. And it just, but then this other part of me was like, you don't release this, because nothing's going to happen with it, and the critics are going to tear it up, because it's the 90s now, and this music has no place to go. Everything was changing. So I didn't really see it as something that anybody would find really interesting at the time, but I didn't even think about releasing it because John wasn't there.
Yeah, sure.
So I just put it on the shelf, and then I thought, there'll come a time that it'll be right. And that time's now. And it feels right, because I'm established already. I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to have a big hit record. I just want to keep my fans entertained with the kind of thing that they expect from me, which is the unexpected. So here you go, because this record is about as unexpected from me as any of my true fans might suspect.
Yeah, it's very true. And so where did the love of motorbikes come from then?
I don't know. It was always there ever since I was little. As a teenager, I would build motorbikes and mini bikes and go-karts. And my older brother was a Harley rider. And the Harley culture, I loved it. From the ages of 12 to like 17 on Long Island, my brother had this big giant Harley, and some of his friends were Hell's Angels.
Oh, wow.
And in Long Island at that time, there was different biker groups. And the one that his friends were part of was called The Breed. And my brother was tough, and all of his friends were really tough ass bikers, hardcore. And they were the nicest, greatest people, toughest, but just earthy, authentic, organic. And just with it, they knew how to party, they knew how to fight, they knew how to ride. They were wonderful, amazing people, and I loved that culture. And I was a little kid, but I'd go to the parties, and then when I was old enough, like 15, I would be playing at the parties with my friends, and then I, would like steal my brother's motorcycle. So I was constantly into the bike thing, but I could never afford one. And I always wanted one. So finally, when I moved out to California when I was 20, I bought a little tiny Honda. That's all I could afford. It was a piece of crap, but it got me around, and I loved it. Me and my wife, well, at the time, my girlfriend Pia, we'd go riding all around the Hollywood Hills and all over the place, and I loved this bike. But then I saved up and I got a 750 Honda, but it still wasn't a Harley. Still, a Harley was like, the idea of getting a Harley was like just a fantasy. I don't know if I ever get a Harley. And it was shortly after I got the Honda, I joined David Lee Roth's band, and I couldn't ride a motorcycle.
Oh, were you not allowed to for insurance?
Yes, I wasn't. It was deemed better for me to not do something that risky, because you know, anything happened to like this little finger, the whole tour is all. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
So I did. I didn't think that was a bad idea, but it was sure limiting for me. But for about 4 years, every day I would pass my motorcycle in the garage, and I'd say, one day I'm going to ride you again.
Yeah.
And I remember the day that I came back from after I quit Dave's band. I'm walking through the garage and I see my motorcycle, and I go, one day I'm going to ride you again. Hey, wait a minute. I can ride you right now. Hey, wait a minute. I can go out and buy a Harley. And I went out and bought 7 Harleys.
What? Not in one go.
No, not in one go.
Okay.
In about a year's time, I went through 7 Harleys.
So were you more fascinated about buying Harleys than buying a load of guitars? I guess you were with Ibanez anyway, so you would get guitars. So
you go through phases.
Because you've never delved into the vintage stuff, have you?
No, the whole, I like vintage, but I don't have the romantic attachment that many collectors have, because for me, the guitars I played, I have to have an emotional connection with them and a particular feeling about them, and they have to sound appropriate. And a lot of the vintage guitars are nice, but they don't have the romantic.
The acrobats that you need.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what did you say?
They don't need the acrobats that you need to be able to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, after I designed the Gem, there's no other guitar for me.
No, of course. Yeah.
I have
the guitar how you want it. So,
Exactly. Yeah. And I love all the other guitars, but they feel limited. Limited just like with little nuance things that are particular to my idiosyncrasies, So, but then, when I'm doing that and working on guitars with Ibanez, I'm really into it, really into it, more than motorcycles or anything like that. But then, you shift for a little while. And at one point in the 90s, I shifted back to these Harleys, and I joined the biker culture in Southern California. Just on the weekends you go for rides. But Gash was a dear friend at the time, and he was a hardcore biker, and he was wild. He would ride his bike he was a total daredevil. I mean, we'd be at a rally or something, and you'd see him coming down the road standing on his seat in an iron cross.
Wow.
And if you look at the back of the record cover, it's a picture of Gash, and he's riding his motorcycle, and he's sitting on the seat facing back on the back seat, flipping the bird. He would do wheelies on Harleys. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
So total daredevil. But I really got into that culture, and I loved working on the bikes. One of my favorite motorcycles is a 1946 Knucklehead with the sidecar that I had, and that's in the Hard Rock Museum in Daytona.
Wow. Okay. So how many?
Was one of the bikes.
That's a cool bike. How many do you have now then?
I just sold my last bike in the Julien's auction.
You just sold your last, so you don't have any more bikes?
Not right now.
Why?
But the bike that I just sold, my last bike, it's a hardcore chopper. It's got ape hangers like this.
Yeah.
It's stretched. It's an Arlen Ness bike. It's got a suicide shift and a clutch that's a foot clutch that's really difficult, and no front brake. So this is like one of the hardest kinds of motorcycles, and I could ride it on a dime. I'm as good at that as guitar, but I just grew out of it. I kind of was very interested for about 10 years, and then I just grew out of it. And now it's more difficult because, shoulders and ape hangers and shifting and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can still do it, but I did it and I loved it. And when I buy another motorcycle, which will be at some point, it's going to be a comfortable, easy one.
It'll be like a sofa on wheels.
That's right. And I'm going to be listening to this Gash record.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, right, this is what this is for.